Hello everyone. Today I'm continuing with the topic TDS and I'm starting with the important due dates. So in the last lecture I discussed with the due dates of depositing TDS as well as of filing the return and of generating the certificate. Now TDS is, as discussed earlier, is deposited monthly. So your financial year starts from April and ends on March of the next month. So the TDS of April will be deposited till 7th of next month, that is 7th May. Similarly, TDS of May will be deposited till 7th of June. Similarly, TDS of June will be deposited till 7th of July. Similarly, it will go on. But for the month of March, there is a difference. The TDS of March will be deposited or can be deposited till 30th of April. Why this date is extended? Reason being the March is the closing date and everyone is busy in closing their book of accounts. So that is why the government has given extra days in order to deposit the TDS of month of March. So the TDS of March can be deposited till 30th of April. Next is TDS return date, till when you can file the return. So return is filed quarterly. First quarter ends on 30th June and the date of filing of first quarter is last date of next month. Okay, so next month after June is July and its last date is 31st. So the date of filing for the quarter that is ending on 30th June is 31st July. Similarly, the second quarter ends on 30th September. Its last date of filing is 31st October. For 31st December, it is 31st January. But for 31st March, it is not April. Because if you remember, till April, we are just depositing the TDS. Okay. So we have 1 month extra. So it is 31st May. Till 31st May, we can file the return of the last quarter. Now, the TDS is actually deducted on two types of incomes. One, TDS on salary and other incomes other than salary. Okay. If you have certain kind of income that is generating from salary, one is that kind of income and other is another kind of income that is other than salary. For example, you have kept some money in bank and you are as an FD and you are getting interest on that fixed deposit. Okay. Now when you file TDS on salary, so you get form number 16. Okay. While the TDS on the payment of other than salary, the form is 16A, right? Talking of salary, this form is issued annually, right? And this form 16A, which are of payments other than salary, are issued quarterly. Both these forms will be visible in form number 26AS that will be shown to you. Okay. In that form, your form number 16 and form number 16A should reflect. That means the TDS which has been cut by the deductor or your payer should reflect in your 26AS form. So you can be sure that the TDS which is deducted is actually deposited also with the government. Fine. Now, this is the most important topic of TDS. From here onward, I am going to discuss various types of incomes on which TDS is deducted. So first is TDS on salary and it covers under section number 192. So who is the eligible deductor? All kinds of employers who are paying salary. So in order to say a word salary, there is important that there should be a relationship of employer and employee in order to say any payment as salary. So any employer who pays salary is eligible deductor. He is eligible to deduct TDS from whatever amount he is paying you in the form of salary. So every person responsible for the payment of salary income shall estimate the tax liability of the recipient and tax so estimated shall be deducted in 12 monthly installments. So any person who is actually paying you the salary will estimate your tax liability and accordingly he will deduct your TDS monthly. Okay. And if any employer fails to deduct the TDS, so on that employer certain penalties can be imposed. Fine. Now, what happens if you are under more than one employer? If you're working for more than one services, okay. So if you are working with more than one employer, so what you need to do is, you as an assessee or as an employee has to collect all the particulars from all the employers and has to give all those details to one of your employer who is going to make your tax estimation and will deduct your TDS and deposit also from your end, right? And in case you have taken a job under some other employer in one financial year itself, that means if you are working in, suppose, firm number A, okay, and you quit your service and then you joined firm as which is known as B. So in that case, you need to collect all the detailed information of the previous employer or the former employer, whatever your salary was, and whatever, if that previous employer has deducted your tax, and whatever other particulars are, all those particulars you need to collect and give it to your current employer, that is firm number B in which you are currently working, right? So you need to give all these information to your current employer so that he can make the estimate of your tax and can deduct TDS and deposit it with the government. Now, if the employee has other incomes also other than salary, okay, so if you have other incomes also, then can your employer deduct TDS on other incomes as well? So yes, so if you have other incomes apart from salary, so you can furnish all the details which are your incomes other than salary, and your employer can deduct TDS on such incomes also, okay. Second type of income is premature taxable withdrawal of employee provident fund. Now we all know provident fund is a kind of saving in which the money is invested and is taken at the time after a certain period of time, say 5 years. Okay. So the motive behind is to have a long-term investment. But if you premature it, that means you take out the money before its maturity date, then what is the condition? So withdrawal of RPF is generally not taxable until and unless you make the premature withdrawal out of it. So if you make any premature withdrawal, so TDS provisions will be applicable. So who is liable to deduct TDS? Any trustee, the trustee of the employee provident fund scheme is liable to deduct TDS, and TDS will be deducted at the rate of 10%. Okay. Then the tax deducted as source under this section has to be made only if your aggregate amount, your provident fund aggregate amount is more than 50,000, then your TDS will be applicable at the rate of 10%. Then if the person to whom the payment is being made, okay, if that person does not show his or her PAN number, according to section 206AA, it is compulsory that the payee or the person who is receiving the money should provide his or her PAN number to the person who is the payer, that means who is going to deduct your TDS. In case the payee fails to present his or her PAN number, so TDS can be cut at higher rate also. Okay. Now, third type of income is interest on securities covered under section 193. So the payer, obviously, the interest, the securities which are being issued by the companies. So company is the payer here. Okay. So the company is liable to deduct your TDS. So the payer is actually paying to the resident Indian some interest on securities. Okay. When he is paying, either he credits or he pays, whichever is earlier. Now, what is the meaning of credit here? It means the person has put an entry into his book of account and he may give you later itself. So whichever is earlier, whether the credit is done or the payment is done, whichever is earlier, at that time the TDS will be deducted. The rate of TDS is 10%, and if PAN is not provided by the payee to the payer, then rate of TDS is 20%. Okay, so at the rate of 20%, TDS will be deducted if PAN is not provided. Now, the interest on securities, which we are talking of, interest on securities, on this, no TDS will be deducted. That means there are certain exceptions. If the securities are of these types, If it is national defense bond, it is related to national defense loan, national development bonds, 7-year national savings certificate, gold bonds up to rupees 10,000, or any of the securities of the central or the state government. If the interest are out of these securities, so on these no TDS will be deducted. Okay. Next type of income is dividend income, covered under section number 194. If any company is giving dividend to the shareholders who is residing in India, so TDS at the rate of 10% is deducted. Okay. And if no PAN is provided by the payee to the payer, higher rate of TDS can be charged. Again, no TDS will be deducted if the dividend is paid to an individual, if the shares are listed on recognized stock exchange, if the shares are issued by the company in which the public are substantially interested, if the dividend is paid by the account pay check, if the dividend is payable to LIC or GIC. In these cases, no TDS will be deducted. Next type of income is interest other than securities. Okay. In the previous, you have received interest on securities. Now, this is again a type of interest income only, but these are other than securities interest, covered under section number 194A. So, any persons other than individual or HUF. In the previous video, I have discussed that any person other than individual and HUF are liable to deduct TDS. So, any person other than individual and HUF who are paying to a resident any interest other than securities, when it is paying at the time of payment or at the time of credit, TDS shall be deducted at the rate of 10%. Okay. And TDS in case of payment by individual and HUF is also done if the tax audit is required. Okay. Again, no TDS. I mean, there are certain exceptions to this case also. If the interest is provided by any banking company or cooperative society engaged in the business of banking, any life insurance corporation of India, that is LIC, unit trust of India, or any company or society engaged in the business of insurance. So no TDS will be applicable. Next type of income is interest on bank deposit or post office deposit notified by the central government, covered under section 194A. So any bank or any post office which gives interest to any person and the amount is more than 10,000, so TDS shall be deducted. Okay. Next is winning from lottery or crossword puzzle under section 194B. If any person makes any income out of lottery, crossword puzzles, card games, so in that case, the total amount, if it exceeds rupees 10,000, so TDS at the rate of 30% shall be applicable. Another is winning from horse races. So any person has income from horse races and who is responsible to pay to the person who has any income by the way of horse races, and if that income exceeds rupees 10,000, then at the time of making the payment, TDS at the rate of 30% shall be deducted. Next is under section 194D, that is insurance commission. So any person who is responsible for paying insurance commission and he is paying to a resident, what he is paying commission exceeding amount rupees 15,000. Okay, then TDS shall be deducted. If the recipient is a resident other than domestic company, then rate of TDS is 5%. If recipient is any domestic company, then the rate of tax is 10%, that is TDS. Next is insurance payment under life insurance policy. So any person who is responsible for paying any sum under a life insurance policy at the time of making payment, TDS at the rate of 1% shall be deducted. Okay, now there are certain conditions. The payee to whom the person who is actually receiving must be the resident of India, and the aggregate amount must be more than 1 lakh rupees. Otherwise, no such TDS shall be deducted. Next type of income is TDS on commission or brokerage, covered under section 194H. So TDS at the rate of 5% shall be deducted, and if PAN is not provided, then at the rate of 20% shall be deducted. Okay, on what? On commission or brokerage income. Okay, for the resident assessee, who is other than individual and HUF, and if the commission or brokerage amount exceeding rupees 15,000, then TDS at the rate of 5% shall be deducted. Next is 194I section, that is income from rent. So if any person to whom any amount is being paid, okay, and other than individual or HUF, and who is responsible for making payment or crediting, then the pay or the assessee to the pay or assessee who is the resident shall deduct TDS. Who is going to deduct the TDS? The payer is going to deduct the TDS. On what amount? Exceeding rupees 1,80,000. Okay. What is the rate? 2% if rent is being paid on plant and machinery or equipment, and 10% if rent is paid on land and building. And if PAN is not provided, then 20% is being charged. Next is TDS by buyer on purchase of immovable property covered under section 194IA. So if any, who is the assessee liable assessee? Every buyer who is going to buy the immovable property other than agricultural land. So immovable property is not going to include the agricultural land. Okay, and every buyer include individual, HUF, firm, any company. So these persons are the liable assessees. What are the conditions? First condition is amount exceeding rupees 50 lakh. So on above 50 lakh, TDS shall be deducted. And the transferor who is transferring the property should be the resident of India. Okay. At what time the TDS is deducted? At the time of making payment or crediting, whichever is earlier. At what rate? 1% of such amount shall be deducted. Okay. Now, what will be the consequences if any person who is deducting your TDS has not, or who is responsible to deduct TDS has not deducted, or who is responsible to deduct and then deposit it to the government has not done such thing? Then what will be the consequences? So if any person paying the income, whose responsibility it is to deduct TDS, it is the responsibility of the person who is paying the income. So he deducts the TDS and he deposits the TDS. And if in both the things he fails, then he will be treated as deemed to be assessee in default. Okay. And upon that person, the penalties will be charged. Okay. Now, that person who is deemed to be assessee in default will pay the tax amount as well as the penalty amount also. The penalty amount includes the interest at 1% per month. So if any person who is liable to deduct TDS, and not only to deduct but deposit the TDS also with the government, if he fails in his responsibility, so that person will be liable to pay the amount of tax plus interest at the rate of 1% per month. So this was all complete material about the TDS which you need to take care of. So thank you very much.